Millionaire kicks pregnant wife out. She returns years later with a son and a shocking truth. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to Heartbeat Narratives, your ultimate destination for all things romance, connection, and heartfelt stories. I'm thrilled to have you here, sharing this amazing journey of exploring love in all its beautiful, complex, and magical forms. Whether you're a hopeless romantic, someone searching for relationship insights, or just love diving into heartwarming content, you're exactly where you need to be. If you're enjoying what you see, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could hit that subscribe button to stay connected with our Heartbeat Narratives community. Drop a like to show some love, support, and motivation. Share this video with someone who might need a little romance in their life. Your support means the world to me and helps us continue creating content that celebrates love, connection, and the beautiful stories that bring us together. Sarah stood on the cool marble steps of the mansion's grand entrance, the twilight sky reflecting a tapestry of fading colors behind her. In her delicate grasp, she held Thomas's small hand, a quiet symbol of hope and resilience amid the silence of a place once steeped in echoes of forgotten promises. The night air was heavy with memories, each breeze carrying whispers of a past Sarah had both cherished and suffered. The mansion loomed before her like an ancient sentinel, its windows dark and unyielding. But in Sarah's eyes, every etched detail and time-worn stone told a story of life that had once been and might still be reclaimed. As she glanced down at Thomas, she felt the weight of their journey, a journey that had begun 2 tumultuous decades ago. It was a time when the world seemed full of infinite possibilities. Sarah vividly remembered the early days when she first met James. The setting was vibrant and brimming with ambition, a bustling cafe in the heart of the city that pulsed with energy and promise. Young and full of dreams, James's smile was as infectious as his ambitions, and his eyes sparkled with the promise of success. For Sarah, who had always believed in love's power to conquer even the deepest doubts, their whirlwind romance seemed nothing short of magical. The pair married in a quaint ceremony under a bright summer sky, their hearts intertwined as they embarked on a future filled with both passion and promise. In those golden days, their love was the kind that poets wrote about, intense, exhilarating, and entirely consuming. As James began building his business empire, Sarah stood by his side, her unwavering belief in him a cornerstone of their early happiness. They reveled in their shared successes, with laughter filling the small corners of their cozy home and dreams that stretched far beyond the confines of their modest beginnings. However, as the years passed, everything began to change. The jubilant laughter was gradually replaced by tense silences, and the vibrant colors of their love faded into muted shades of uncertainty. In that now distant past, a single moment of betrayal would ripple through their lives like a stone cast into a tranquil pond. Sarah's memory turned to the fateful day when she discovered she was pregnant. The news had initially filled their home with anticipation and warmth. James's eyes had shone with excitement as he envisioned a future where their love would be immortalized in the laughter of their child. Yet, life's unpredictable twists were already at play. Within a short span of time, James's business began to surge unexpectedly. A meteoric rise that brought wealth, luxury, and an entirely new social circle into his life. With the newfound affluence came change. James's priorities shifted. The evenings once spent in quiet intimacy were replaced by lavish parties and endless meetings with influential figures. His once tender glances turned into fleeting, distracted looks, and the deep conversations they once shared dwindled into hollow exchanges. It wasn't long before a pervasive sense of estrangement crept into their home, leaving Sarah to wonder where the man she had once adored had vanished. Amidst the whirlwind of success, a pernicious seed of doubt was planted. A trusted business partner, whose intentions were anything but pure, began to whisper insidious suggestions, insinuating that Sarah's loyalty might be compromised. The seeds of suspicion sprouted into a dense thicket of uncertainty in James's mind. Late-night phone calls and unexplained absences began to dominate their lives, each one further distancing him from the woman who had once been his everything. Sarah found herself caught in a vortex of bewilderment and heartache. She was left grappling with conflicting emotions as James's demeanor grew colder, his words sharper, and his actions increasingly alienating. The once shared dreams now seemed like distant illusions, fragile fragments of a life that had slowly crumbled into dust. In the midst of this storm, an ultimatum was silently forming, a decision that would irrevocably change the course of their lives. In a moment that still haunted her every waking hour, James confronted Sarah with a torrent of accusations. With a voice edged in bitterness and eyes clouded by misplaced suspicion, he declared that the child growing inside her was not his. The revelation shattered the delicate remnants of trust they had painstakingly built over the years. Despite Sarah's desperate protests and impassioned pleas for understanding, James's newfound obsession with his own success left no room for forgiveness. In the ruthless logic of his spiraling world, Sarah was no longer a partner. She had become an impediment to the life he was determined to forge. That fateful confrontation ended with James's cold dismissal. Sarah was forcibly the only home she had known, her hand clutching nothing but a few scattered belongings and an unyielding resolve to survive. In the bitter aftermath of betrayal, as Sarah walked away from the life they once shared, a question lingered in the silence of her heart. What would one do if someone who once betrayed them suddenly reappeared in life? Have you ever wondered what you would do if someone who once betrayed you suddenly reappeared in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Standing alone on the mansion's doorstep, Sarah's eyes met the horizon with a mixture of sorrow and strength. The past was a tapestry of love, pain, and resilience, one that forged her into the woman she was today. With Thomas by her side and memories that refused to be buried, Sarah knew that the journey ahead was as unpredictable as it was inevitable. The mansion, a silent witness to a broken past, now beckoned her forward, a subtle invitation to face the ghosts of yesterday, to uncover buried truths, and perhaps to find a way to heal. Sarah's life had taken a swift turn from the promising dawn of love to the dark precipice of betrayal. It began with the gentle revelation that would forever alter the course of her destiny, an unexpected pregnancy. In the soft glow of their modest home, Sarah had cradled the realization that a new life was growing within her. For a brief, shining moment, hope danced in her eyes as she imagined a future where love and family would heal all wounds. James, ever the optimist in those early days, had been overjoyed. He'd envisioned his legacy, a son to carry forward his name and spirit. In the beginning, their shared dreams painted a future of warmth and security. They had celebrated with quiet dinners and whispered plans in the soft hours of the night. But as his business began to surge in ways neither of them had anticipated, the delicate balance they had so carefully maintained started to unravel. The transformation in James was as rapid as it was unrelenting. Overnight, he went from being the loving partner Sarah had always known to a man consumed by ambition. His once gentle eyes hardened, now fixed on the endless possibilities of wealth and status. Business deals and board meetings replaced quiet evenings at home. And with each success, James found himself slipping further into a world that seemed to value money over meaning. Amid this dizzying ascent, the change wasn't limited to his career alone. Sarah noticed subtle shifts in his behavior, whispers of discontent that began as mere murmurs and escalated into a full-blown storm. The man who had once laughed wholeheartedly at her stories was now distracted and aloof, his mind preoccupied with strategies and the thrill of closing deals. His phone rang at odd hours, and the long, unexplained absences grew more frequent. Every missed dinner, and every quiet moment replaced by his insistence on urgent business matters began to chip away at the trust that had once been the cornerstone of their union. It wasn't long before an insidious force entered their lives, a business partner whose ambition was matched only by his willingness to manipulate. With a silken tongue and a mind for strategy, he began to sow the seeds of doubt in James's mind. In hushed conversations behind closed doors, he painted a picture of betrayal, suggesting that Sarah's fidelity might not be as unwavering as it appeared. His insinuations, veiled as friendly advice, were designed to erode the foundation of trust between the two. James, already grappling with the dizzying success of his burgeoning empire, found himself increasingly vulnerable to these poisonous suggestions. The partner's words resonated in his mind, intertwining with his growing insecurities. Each suspicious phone call, each unexplained late-night absence, was no longer seen as a benign occurrence, but as evidence of some hidden transgression. His doubts, once fleeting, began to solidify into a belief that perhaps the woman he had cherished was capable of the unthinkable. Sarah, for apart, remained steadfast in her love and devotion. She worked quietly to support the growing life within her and hold the fragile threads of their once beautiful relationship together. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, the tension in their home became palpable. What had started as quiet concern blossomed into an atmosphere heavy with suspicion. Sarah's attempt at reassurance, her soft-spoken words and gentle smiles, fell on ears now clouded by fear and mistrust. The breaking point came one fateful evening. The air was thick with unspoken words as James returned home late, his face a mask of stormy conflict. Sarah, weary from the day and filled with an intuitive sense of dread, greeted him with a tentative hope that things might still be salvaged. But that night, as the silence stretched uncomfortably between them, James's frustration reached its peak. In a voice cold and trembling with pent-up anger, James began his tirade. The accusation spilled forth like a torrent, each word cutting deeper than the last. He accused Sarah of betrayal, her infidelity painted vividly with every harsh syllable. The room, once filled with the warmth of shared memories, now resonated with the echo of his bitter allegations. "How could you?" he demanded, his voice cracking under the weight of his disbelief. "How could you betray me when I was building our future?" His eyes, once filled with adoration, now burned with feverish mistrust. Sarah's protests, filled with tears and desperate pleas, seemed to vanish into the charged air. She tried to explain the late nights spent on errands or the calls that she claimed were innocuous, but her words were lost amid the clamor of his accusations. The betrayal, real or imagined, had already taken root in his mind. In that fateful moment, every doubt and every whisper of suspicion crystallized into a singular, devastating verdict. The child growing inside her was not his. The finality of his words was like a gavel striking a courtroom, immediate and irrevocable. With a resolute coldness, James declared that she was no longer welcome in his life, no longer deserving of the home they had built together. The love that once filled the space between them was replaced by a void, a chasm carved out by suspicion and wounded pride. In a matter of moments, the vibrant tapestry of their shared dreams had been torn asunder, leaving behind nothing but raw pain and shattered trust. Sarah stood frozen, her heart aching with the weight of betrayal. The man she had loved, who had once promised to protect and cherish her, had now cast her aside with a single, devastating proclamation. The shock of his words left her speechless, her mind reeling with disbelief. In that moment, everything changed. The home that had been their sanctuary turned into a battleground of lost trust and sorrow. With trembling hands, Sarah gathered a few belongings, each item a painful reminder of the life they had once shared. As she stepped out into the night, the chill in the air mirrored the cold despair that now gripped her heart. The doors of the mansion closed behind her, not with a creak of the threshold, but with the finality of a door shut on a chapter of her life. The very foundations of her existence, built on love and shared dreams, were now in ruins. In the days that followed, the fallout of that night echoed in every corner of Sarah's world. The once bright promise of new life, symbolized by the tiny heartbeat within her, was now overshadowed by the darkness of betrayal. Friends and family looked on in silent pity. Unable to reconcile the image of the caring woman, they knew with a heartbroken figure who had been cast aside. Sarah was forced to confront a reality in which every memory of laughter and love was now tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. Meanwhile, James plunged deeper into the world of business and high society. His success soared even higher, but at a cost that no amount of wealth could mend. The rift between him and Sarah widened with every passing day, nourished by regret, anger, and the relentless pursuit of facade of perfection. His partner's insidious influence had done its work, and the truth was obscured by a fog of manipulated emotions and distorted perceptions. The stark contrast between the life Sarah was forced to lead and the opulence that now defined James's world could not have been more apparent. As Sarah struggled to make sense of the betrayal, she clung to a quiet resolve deep within her. Though her heart was shattered, she refused to let the darkness consume her entirely. In the solitude of her sorrow, she vowed to build a life for herself and her unborn child, one defined not by the shadows of the past, but by the promise of a new beginning. That night of betrayal had set in motion a chain of events that would reverberate through every facet of their lives. Sarah's painful exit from the home they once shared was more than just a physical departure. It was a moment when trust was irreparably broken, and a future of uncertainty was thrust upon her. Even as the mansion's doors closed behind her, the echo of James's accusations haunted her every step, a constant reminder that sometimes the wounds of betrayal run deep. In the bitter silence of that long night, as Sarah walked away with nothing but the remnants of her shattered dreams, the question that had first whispered its way into her heart now roared in her mind. Was the man she had loved truly lost to her, or was there a chance, however slim, for redemption and truth to emerge in the darkness of betrayal? After the night when everything shattered, Sarah's world became a solitary battleground, a landscape where each day was fought with grit, determination, and a fierce love for the life growing inside her. The echoes of betrayal still haunted her, but with no choice left, she stepped away from the ruins of her former life and began to carve out a new existence on her own terms. The first weeks were the harshest. Sarah moved into a modest apartment on the edge of the city, a far cry from the lavish mansion she had once called home. Every piece of furniture, every crack in the wall, became a symbol of the loss she had endured. Yet, beneath the weight of despair, a stubborn ember of hope flickered. She was no longer defined by the bitterness of abandonment. She was defined by the promise of a new beginning and the unyielding love for the child she would soon bring into the world. In those early days, Sarah's mornings began with quiet resolve. The soft light of dawn crept through her small window as she prepared for the day ahead. She would often stand before a mirror, gently touching her growing belly, whispering reassurances into the quiet of the morning. "I will make it through this," she would say, the words both a mantra and a vow to the unborn life inside her. It was in those solitary moments that Sarah discovered an inner strength she had never known, a resilience born of necessity and nurtured by love. Finding a job was an immediate necessity. With no financial support from James, every dollar had to be earned. Sarah took up work at a local cafe, a bustling haven for early risers and night owls alike. The job was grueling, filled with the constant hum of espresso machines, clattering dishes, and a steady stream of customers. Yet, within the daily grind, she discovered a community of people who offered warmth, compassion, and unexpected friendships. Her co-workers, having heard fragments of her story, admired the quiet dignity with which she bore her burdens. They saw in her a determination that was both humbling and inspiring, a woman who, despite the heavy hand of fate, refused to be broken. Outside of work, Sarah's life was punctuated by small victories and painful challenges alike. She learned to navigate the maze of single motherhood with a fierce independence. Every challenge, from managing bills on a tight budget to the long nights spent comforting herself with dreams of a brighter future, became part of her story of survival. She found solace in routine, cooking simple meals, taking long walks through the city's parks, and spending quiet evenings reading at the local library. These moments, however ordinary, stitched together a fabric of resilience that slowly began to redefine her identity. As the months turned into years, Sarah grew into a woman transformed by adversity. While the scars of betrayal never fully faded, they began to soften into quiet reminders of what she had overcome. Her daughter, whom she named Emma, was born in a modest hospital room, wrapped in blankets and the warm glow of hope. Emma's arrival marked a turning point, a moment when Sarah truly understood that life, no matter how cruel, still offered chances for beauty and renewal. Emma's early years were marked by Sarah's determination to provide a stable and loving environment. Despite working long hours at the cafe and juggling multiple part-time jobs, Sarah made sure that Emma always felt cherished. Their small apartment became a cocoon of warmth, filled with homemade meals, laughter, and the occasional tears shed over memories of a past life that now seemed distant. In every challenge, Sarah found the courage to smile and to believe that her sacrifices would pave the way for a brighter future for her child. Alongside motherhood, Sarah quietly pursued her own growth. With every passing year, she nurtured a long-held passion for art and design, a passion that had once been relegated to background in favor of more immediate survival. Late at night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sarah would sit at her small wooden desk and let her creativity flow. Sketches and designs filled notebooks and eventually spilled onto canvases. What began as a private therapy soon blossomed into something far greater, a business idea that combined her artistic talents with a practical sense of entrepreneurship. In time, Sarah's small apartment transformed into both a home and a creative studio. Neighbors began to notice her work, delicate, thoughtful pieces that captured the raw essence of life's beauty amid hardship. It wasn't long before local galleries took an interest in her art. For the first time in years, Sarah found herself stepping into the light, her work a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The recognition was not only a professional breakthrough, it was a personal redemption, a signal that she was rebuilding her life on her own terms. Yet, amid the steady progress, shadows of doubt and memories of betrayal still lingered. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, when the weight of abandonment by the man she once loved pressed heavily on her heart. In those moments, Sarah would hold Emma close and whisper promises of a better future, a future where every scar told a story of survival, not defeat. She vowed never to let bitterness define her, nor to allow her past to cast a shadow over the vibrant possibilities of tomorrow. In time, Emma began to grow into a curious and bright child, her personality a gentle echo of Sarah's resilience and creativity. As Emma blossomed, so did the unspoken hope that someday she might learn the full story of her origins, a story that Sarah had carefully shielded from her for years. Sarah had chosen to craft a narrative that focused on love and perseverance rather than on the painful truths of betrayal. She believed that some stories were too heavy for a child to bear, and that Emma's future should be built on hope, not on resentment. Nevertheless, as Emma grew older, questions began to surface. Who was her father? What had truly happened on that long-ago night? Sarah's answers were gentle and evasive, carefully designed to protect Emma's tender heart from the darker corners of her own past. Yet, behind every gentle smile, Sarah wrestled with the internal conflict of keeping secrets that weighed heavily on her conscience. Despite her best efforts to move forward, the past was never far behind. Occasional memories of the life she had lost would wash over her, echoes of a time when promises were made and trust was broken in an instant. These recollections sometimes came unbidden during the quiet hours of the night, when the world was asleep and only the hum of distant traffic kept her company. In those solitary moments, Sarah would silently reaffirm her commitment to Emma and to the new life they were building together. The hardships of her past became the stepping stones to a future defined by resilience and quiet strength. Sarah's struggle was not merely about survival. It was about transformation. Through every setback, every moment of despair, she nurtured an inner resolve to redefine herself. The small victories at the cafe, the warm compliments on her art, and the joyful laughter of Emma were all pieces of mosaic that painted a portrait of a woman who had reclaimed her destiny. Each day was an act of defiance against the forces that had once sought to crush her spirit. With every new creation, every kind word from a friend, Sarah rebuilt the foundations of her self-worth, brick by painstaking brick. As years passed, Sarah's journey from the depths of despair to a life filled with purpose became a quiet inspiration to those around her. Friends and even strangers spoke of the strength they saw in her, a strength born not from the absence of pain, but from the courage to rise above it. In her modest studio, surrounded by canvases that captured the spectrum of human emotion, Sarah found a way to transform her heartbreak into a beacon of hope. It was a daily reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, one could find light in the darkness. Sarah's struggle was an ongoing journey, a testament to the indomitable power of the human spirit. It was a story of a woman who, despite having lost everything, refused to let her past dictate her future. In the quiet determination of her daily routine, in the gentle laughter shared with Emma, and in the soft glow of her art studio, Sarah discovered that life, no matter how cruel, offered endless possibilities for renewal. And in each brushstroke and every whispered promise, she continued to write her own story, a story of resilience, hope, and the enduring strength of a mother's love. 2 decades had passed since that fateful night when Sarah's life was irreversibly altered. In the quiet corners of her new existence, the past was carefully tucked away, until it resurfaced in the form of a crisis that neither time nor distance could silence. At 19, Thomas had blossomed into a young man defined by a quiet intelligence and a ceaseless curiosity about the life he had never fully known. Though Sarah had shielded him from the painful details of his origins, Thomas's resemblance to the man who once called himself his father, was unmistakable, not just in physical features, but in the mannerisms and the latent talents that emerged whenever he played the piano or solved a challenging problem. Questions, once faint murmurs at the edges of his mind, began crescendo as he reached the threshold of adulthood. It was during a routine visit to the doctor that the fragile balance of their carefully constructed lives was shattered once again. Thomas had been experiencing unexplained fatigue and intermittent bouts of dizziness that, at first, were dismissed as the vagaries of youth. However, a routine blood test revealed an anomaly, a rare genetic condition that affected the function of his kidneys. The diagnosis was grim. Without intervention, his life could be at risk. The revelation set off a chain reaction, pulling both Thomas and Sarah into a frantic search for answers and solutions. In the sterile, hushed corridors of the hospital, Sarah's heart pounded with a familiar blend of dread and determination. The doctors explained that the condition was not only rare, but also potentially hereditary, raising an unspoken question that had haunted Sarah since her painful separation from James. Could it be that the very traits and vulnerabilities that marked her own struggle were now etched into Thomas's genetic makeup? The possibility was both horrifying and inexplicably tethered to the mystery of his absent father. For Thomas, the news was a mix of fear and resolve. His youthful curiosity, once directed towards distant dreams, now turned sharply towards uncovering the truth about his own origins. Late into the night, he pored over medical texts and genetic studies, trying to understand the nature of his condition. Every new piece of information led to more questions, and with each answer, the specter of his past loomed larger. "Who am I?" he would ask himself in quiet moments, the question echoing through his thoughts like a refrain. Sarah, too, was forced to confront the ghosts of her past. The genetic condition that threatened Thomas's life could not be explained without understanding its origins. With no alternative and her heart heavy with reluctant hope, she knew there was only one path left: to reach out to the man she had once loved and who had abandoned them so long ago. The decision was agonizing. For years, Sarah had vowed never to rely on James again. Yet, faced with the possibility of losing her son, she realized that bridging the gap between past and present was no longer optional. It was essential. The search for answers led Sarah on an emotional journey back to the opulent mansion that had once symbolized betrayal and heartbreak. She hesitated at the threshold, the weight of the past pressing down on her as heavily as the fear of the future. Accompanied by Thomas, who, despite his youth, carried a dignity and resolve that belied his age, they stepped into a world that had long since become foreign. The mansion, now maintained in pristine condition, was a silent testament to a life that had moved on in stark contrast to the quiet, hard-working world Sarah had built. Inside the grand foyer, every step echoed with memories. Thomas's eyes roamed over the elegant chandeliers and marble floors, absorbing the atmosphere with a mixture of awe and trepidation. He was driven by a need to understand a man he had only heard of in whispers and half-remembered stories, a man whose presence, even in absence, seemed to define part of his very being. James, who had spent the intervening years caught up in his own relentless pursuit of success, was unprepared for the intrusion of the past. When Sarah and Thomas arrived, he was reviewing documents in his expansive study, surrounded by the familiar trappings of wealth and accomplishment. The sight of Sarah, a figure from his own history, wrapped in quiet dignity and unspoken sorrow, stunned him into silence. And then there was Thomas, standing beside her, a mirror image of the man he once was, yet imbued with a quiet determination that spoke of a life built in defiance of abandonment. For a long, charged moment, the three stood in a tableau of unresolved history and raw emotion. James's eyes widened in disbelief, and for a brief instant, the man who had become a symbol of success and cold ambition seemed to crumble beneath the weight of his own remorse. Thomas, with steady gaze and measured words, calmly stated the reason for their visit. "I need help, Mr. James. I have a condition, one that might be tied to our blood. I need to know the truth." The words were simple, yet they carried the force of years of suppressed emotion and unanswered questions. James's mind raced. The genetic condition, the resemblance, and the undeniable connection between them could no longer be ignored. His heart pounded with a mixture of dread, guilt, and an unfamiliar sense of responsibility, a feeling he had long suppressed in pursuit of his empire. As the trio sat in the quiet intimacy of the study, Sarah recounted the events that had led them back together. The diagnosis, the desperate search for answers, and the painful realization that the past might be intricately woven into Thomas's fate. With each word, the distance between them seemed to narrow, replaced by a tentative bridge of shared history and potential redemption. Sarah's voice trembled not from weakness, but from the raw honesty of the moment. "I never imagined that the choices we made so long ago would come back to us like this," she confessed, her eyes never leaving James's. James listened, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions surging through him. He remembered the night of the accusation, the pain in Sarah's eyes, and the shattering of promises. Now, faced with a son who might carry his very essence, a reminder of both his brilliance and his failings, he felt an overwhelming urge to make amends. Yet pride and past bitterness waged an internal battle, leaving him uncertain of how to proceed. I never wanted to hurt you," he murmured, his voice soft and tinged with regret. "I was blinded by ambition and jealousy, and I let lies dictate my actions." Thomas, ever composed despite his youth, interjected gently, "I only want to understand who I am, and maybe knowing the truth can help us all heal." His words, measured and wise, resonated in the stillness of the room. It was as if the years of separation and silence had distilled into that single, honest plea for clarity and connection. Over the next few days, the mansion became a place of intense reflection and difficult conversations. James agreed to undergo medical testing, a step that, for him, felt like opening a door he had long kept shut. The waiting period was fraught with tension. Every passing moment was a reminder of the stakes. Thomas's life, the unspoken truth about their shared blood, and the long-overdue confrontation with the past. During this period, Sarah and James navigated a fragile new dynamic. In the quiet hours before dawn, as James stared out at the sprawling estate from a window, he would recall the vibrant, hopeful days of their youth. Regret mixed with nostalgia, and slowly, an unfamiliar sense of accountability took root. Meanwhile, Sarah, though guarded, found herself reconsidering the bitterness that had once defined her. The necessity of the moment, coupled with Thomas's earnest need for the truth, forced her to face her own feelings about forgiveness and the possibility of redemption. When the results finally came in, they confirmed what both Sarah and Thomas had hoped and feared. James was indeed Thomas's biological father. The evidence was irrefutable, merging medical facts with the undeniable physical and emotional ties that had long been hidden in the shadows of the past. In that moment, the room seemed to exhale a collective breath, as if releasing decades of tension and pain. Yet, the revelation was only the first step toward healing. Soon after, another truth emerged, a confession from James's former business partner, the man whose venomous whispers had ignited the fires of betrayal all those years ago. In a quiet interview with a trusted confidant, he admitted that he had fabricated evidence to cast doubt on Sarah's fidelity. His confession was a bitter pill that, while offering a glimmer of clarity, also underscored the extent of the manipulation that fueled James's jealousy and suspicion. As the layers of deceit were peeled away, James was forced to confront not only the betrayal of a trusted friend, but also his own failure to see the truth. The revelations were a catalyst for introspection, driving him to acknowledge that his actions had been driven by a toxic mixture of ambition, insecurity, and misplaced pride. Now, with the undeniable truth before him and a son who needed him, the path toward reconciliation beckoned, a path that would require him to shed the armor of arrogance and embrace a future built on honesty and regretful contrition. Thomas, who had long carried the burden of unanswered questions, found solace in the emerging truth. His eyes, filled with cautious hope, looked to James not as an idol or a distant memory, but as a flawed human being capable of change. "I'm not here to blame anyone," he said softly during one of their long conversations in the study. "I just want to know who I am and maybe find a way to move forward together." In that quiet moment, the mansion's walls bore silent witness to the dawn of a fragile, new beginning. The revelations had not erased the past, but they had carved out the possibility of a future where healing and understanding might finally take root. With every shared story and every tear shed in earnest reflection, the wounds of betrayal began to close, leaving in their place the tentative buds of forgiveness and unity. As the days unfolded, the trio set forth on a journey of discovery, one where truth was not a weapon but a bridge connecting their disparate worlds. For Thomas, the revelation was not just about his lineage, but about embracing the complexity of his identity. For Sarah, it was a bittersweet acknowledgement that the past, however painful, could also pave the way for unexpected healing. And for James, it was a long overdue reckoning, a moment to own his mistakes, seek redemption, and perhaps finally become the father he had always been meant to be. In the quiet, lingering light of that fateful day, amidst documents and whispered apologies, the revelation of blood and truth set the stage for a journey that would test the bonds of family, challenge the scars of betrayal, and ultimately offer a glimmer of hope that even the deepest wounds could one day mend. The mansion's stately corridors seemed to hold their breath as the day of confrontation dawned, a day destined to challenge every assumption, every scar, and every whispered regret from the past. Sarah and Thomas had returned to the place that once symbolized betrayal, determined now to face not only the man who had once turned his back on them, but also the painful memories that had haunted their lives for decades. Thomas, dressed in a neatly pressed shirt that hinted at both youthful determination and the quiet gravity of impending change, led the way up the grand staircase. His measured steps echoed in the vast entry hall, where each footfall seemed to draw out the memories of laughter, tears, and a long-forgotten tenderness. Behind him, Sarah followed with equal resolve, a woman tempered by hardship and hope, her eyes steady even as her heart pounded with a mix of trepidation and a desperate need for closure. They arrived at a sitting room bathed in the soft glow of afternoon light. There, in a high-backed leather chair that had once been the throne of a powerful man, sat James. His posture was rigid, as if each muscle in his body were still coiled from years of self-imposed isolation. The moment his gaze met theirs, time seemed to pause. For a heartbeat, the opulent room, filled with art, accolades, and the ghosts of a bygone era, became the silent stage upon which their shared history will be laid bare. James's eyes, guarded yet haunted by familiar echoes, flickered between Sarah and Thomas. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the tension could be cut with a knife. Finally, Thomas stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of resolve. "I'm not here to reopen old wounds," he began, his tone measured and respectful. "But I need to know the truth about who I am. I need to understand a man who is my father." For a moment, James's eyes betrayed a glimmer of uncertainty. The proud facade he had constructed over the years, layer upon layer of ambition and regret, wavered in the face of this simple, honest plea from a son he barely knew. Sarah watched silently from the doorway, her heart aching with both fear and a cautious hope. The confrontation had always been inevitable, and now it was upon them. James cleared his throat, his voice rough with emotion. I never imagined this day would come," he murmured, his gaze lowering as if burdened by the weight of his own decisions. "I built my world on the idea that I was moving forward, that I was leaving the past behind. But I can see now that some things, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of coming to light." Thomas took a step closer, his eyes searching James's face. "All these years, I felt a piece of me missing," he said softly yet firmly. "I've wondered if I'm meant to follow in your footsteps, or if I'm destined for something different. And now, faced with this condition, it's like a mirror reflecting a history I don't fully understand." The silence that followed was almost palpable. Outside, the distant hum of the city blended with the quiet ticking of an antique clock in the corner of the room. James's features tightened with inner conflict. His mind raced back to the night of the accusations, to the words that had once severed the ties of love and trust. In that moment of confrontation, the memories were raw and vivid. Sarah's tearful pleas, his own uncontrolled anger, and the unbearable weight of pride that had led him to cast her out. "I was wrong," James finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was manipulated by my own insecurities and by the venomous lies of someone I trusted. I allowed doubt to cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I hurt the two people I care about most." His confession was slow and measured. Each were a step toward redemption he had long feared was out of reach. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she listened. The confrontation, once a battleground of blame, had transformed into a reluctant space for truth. "I spent years living in the shadow of that night," she said, her voice quivering with both pain and resolve. "I had to find a way to survive, to build a life for Thomas and for myself. I never stopped hoping that someday you'd see past the lies and recognize the truth of what we had." Thomas nodded, understanding that the confrontation was not just about him. It was about the two lives forever intertwined by betrayal and now the promise of healing. "I need to know who I am," he repeated, his voice echoing softly in the quiet room. "Not just because of this illness, but because I deserve to know where I come from." James's eyes flickered with regret, and he rose from his chair, his movements tentative as if he were approaching a precipice. "I've made choices that I can never fully undo," he began, the weight of his past evident in every syllable. "But I want to try. I want to help you, Thomas, with this condition, and, if you'll allow it, be part of your life in some way." His admission was more than just an apology. It was an invitation to rebuild a connection that had long been shattered. A storm of conflicting emotions surged in the room. For Sarah, the man she had once loved and then despised for his cruelty now offered a hand of fragile reconciliation. For Thomas, the man before him was both a stranger and a living embodiment of a legacy he had long questioned. The conversation, delicate and laden with years of unspoken pain, slowly began to weave a tapestry of understanding. Over the following hours, the trio discussed the medical tests that lay ahead. James agreed to undergo further genetic testing, not only to confirm the truth of his paternity, but also to ascertain the best course of action for Thomas's treatment. Each test, each result, would serve as a stepping stone on a long road to redemption. The tension in the room gave way to a cautious optimism, a realization that though the past could never be changed, the future might yet hold promise if they could confront it together. As the day waned, the conversation turned to the role that external forces had played in shaping their lives. James recounted how a trusted business partner's poisonous insinuations had warped his judgment, planting seeds of doubt that led to his disastrous actions. His words were laced with remorse as he detailed the manipulations that had twisted his perceptions and ultimately cost him the family he once held dear. "I was deceived by someone I thought was a friend," he admitted, "and in doing so, I lost sight of what was truly important." Sarah listened, her own heart aching with the burden of memories. Yet, beneath the sorrow was a quiet understanding, a recognition that sometimes the wounds inflicted by betrayal ran deeper than the immediate pain. "We were both victims of circumstances beyond our control," she said softly, "but now we have a chance to reclaim our lives from the remnants of that past." Thomas, who had been silently absorbing every word, finally spoke with a clarity that surprised even him. "I don't want to live in anger or resentment," he said. "I want to understand what happened so that we can all move forward. I believe that even if we can't change the past, we can choose to shape a better future together." The room seemed to lighten ever so slightly as his words took root. The confrontation, once an arena of harsh accusations and festering wounds, had transformed into a space for honest dialogue, a beginning of reconciliation that, while tentative, held the promise of healing. James reached out, almost hesitantly, to place a hand on Thomas's shoulder, a gesture that spoke of both apology and the hope of a renewed bond. "I'm here," he said quietly, "and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to help you and to try and make up for lost time." For Sarah, the moment was bittersweet. The man she had once adored had wronged her in ways she could never fully erase. Yet here he was, vulnerable and contrite before her and her son. "We have a long road ahead," she murmured, "but maybe it's a road we can walk together, if we're willing to forgive and learn from our mistakes." Outside, as the fading light of day gave way to the quiet serenity of dusk, the mansion's grand windows glowed with gentle warmth, a silent witness to the unfolding transformation within its walls. The confrontation had laid bare the tangled threads of their shared history, betrayal, loss, regret, and now, the fragile beginnings of forgiveness. In the days that followed, the mansion transformed into a haven of cautious collaboration. James, with each measured step, began to reconnect with the man he once was, a man capable of both great ambition and, as he was now learning, profound remorse. Sarah, too, found herself opening up to the possibility that the past need not define her future entirely. And Thomas, the bridge between two very different worlds, became the living symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most fractured family could, with truth and effort, find a way toward healing. The confrontation was not a magical solution that erased decades of pain. Instead, it was the start of an arduous journey, a journey in which every conversation, every shared memory, and every small act of kindness became a mortar binding the broken pieces of a once-sunder family. In that long, emotional day, amidst the echoes of a turbulent past, the seeds of reconciliation were planted. And though the scars of betrayal would always be a part of their story, they no longer had to dictate the future. Standing together in that quiet, hallowed room, Sarah, James, and Thomas faced the uncertain horizon, each aware that true healing would require time, understanding, and the willingness to embrace both the light and the shadows of their shared history. Yet, for the first time in many years, there was hope, a hope that forgiveness, however tentative, could blossom into a future where love might triumph over the bitterness of regret. In the weeks and months that followed the raw confrontation, the mansion, once a silent monument to past betrayals, slowly transformed into a place of tentative healing and new beginnings. James, Sarah, and Thomas each took hesitant steps toward rebuilding the relationships shattered by years of misunderstanding and regret. James began by taking concrete actions. No longer content to be a distant figure hiding behind wealth and ambition, he started to reintegrate himself into Thomas's life. He arranged for regular medical consultations and, with genuine concern, accompanied Thomas to appointments. In these moments, the veneer of the man who once valued business above all slowly peeled away, revealing a father determined to make amends. With every conversation about Thomas's health, every shared moment of quiet understanding, James demonstrated that he was willing to shoulder the responsibility he had long evaded. For Thomas, this new phase was bittersweet. The boy who had grown up grappling with questions about his identity now found himself cautiously accepting the presence of a father he had only recently come to know. His initial guardedness, tempered by the strength he had cultivated over years of uncertainty, gradually gave way to a quiet hope. In the hospital corridors and study sessions where James offered his support, Thomas began to see his father not as an emblem of past pain, but as a flawed human being capable of change. Sarah, too, experienced a transformation of spirit. Years of having to rely solely on her own resilience had molded her into a woman who could weather any storm. Yet, the process of forgiveness, especially when intertwined with the possibility of reclaiming a lost part of her life, demanded a delicate balance between caution and hope. She spent many evenings alone in her modest home-turned studio, painting and reflecting on the past. Slowly, she began to see that reconciliation wasn't about forgetting what had been done, but about embracing the possibility that people could grow, change, and redeem themselves. One crisp autumn afternoon, the three of them gathered in the mansion's spacious garden, a setting that had once echoed with the bitterness of farewell, but now resonated with the promise of renewal. Golden leaves crunched underfoot as they sat around a long, wooden table beneath a pergola adorned with climbing ivy. Over cups of freshly brewed tea and shared meals prepared with care, the conversation turned from practicalities to personal stories. James recounted moments from his youth, stories of ambition and hope that he had long buried beneath layers of regret. His voice, steady yet filled with vulnerability, offered glimpses of the man he might have been had pride not clouded his judgment. Thomas listened intently, his eyes reflecting both admiration and sorrow. "I see the man you once were," he said quietly, "and I'm willing to accept that you're still learning to be the father I need." The sincerity in his words broke down further walls between them, and James's eyes glistened with gratitude and remorse. In a pivotal moment, Sarah shared her own journey, the hardships of building a life on her own, the nights spent worrying about the future, and the constant effort to shield Thomas from the harsh truth of their past. "I learned that forgiveness is about erasing pain," she explained, her tone gentle yet firm. "It's about acknowledging the hurt, but also choosing to believe that we can create something better. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's the only way to move forward." Her words, laden with the wisdom of years, resonated deeply with both James and Thomas. As the garden conversations grew more frequent, a slow transformation took hold. James began to shoulder not only the responsibility for Thomas's medical expenses and treatment, but also the emotional debt he owed Sarah. He organized community events at the mansion, charity art exhibits featuring Sarah's work, fundraisers for pediatric kidney research, and family days meant to bring hope to those struggling with similar issues. These initiatives, though small in the grand scheme of his once vast empire, were symbolic gestures of atonement. They signified his commitment not only to Thomas's recovery, but to rebuilding of trust with Sarah, who had stood steadfast through decades of loneliness and loss. For Thomas, reconciliation was a journey of self-discovery. He enrolled in a local college, where his natural talent and determination earned him respect among his peers and professors alike. While he excelled academically, his personal life remained intertwined with the evolving dynamics at home. His budding relationship with his father, though still marked by occasional awkward silences and unspoken regrets, began to fill a void that had long haunted him. During quiet afternoons spent working on school projects or engaging in long walks through the nearby park, Thomas found moments of connection with James, moments where the past was acknowledged but not allowed to dictate the future. Meanwhile, Sarah, once a solitary fighter, now found strength in community and collaboration. The success of her art had opened doors to opportunities she had never imagined: exhibitions, collaborations with local businesses, and even mentorship programs for young artists in similar situations. Her once modest apartment had blossomed into a vibrant studio, filled with canvases that told stories of resilience, pain, and ultimately redemption. Through her art, Sarah communicated a powerful message that life, with all its hardships, could be transformed into something beautiful when nurtured with love and understanding. One evening, as winter began to hint at its arrival, the family gathered in the mansion's drawing room for a final, heartfelt conversation, a moment that encapsulated the journey they had undertaken. The room was softly lit by a crackling fire, and the quiet murmur of rain against the windows added a soothing cadence to the night. James, with a solemn expression, took a deep breath and addressed them both. "I have spent so many years lost in my own ambition, blinded by pride and anger," he began, his voice unsteady but resolute. "I can never change the pain I caused, but I promise to spend every day trying to make up for it. I want to be the father Thomas deserves and the partner Sarah once believed in. I know forgiveness won't erase the past, but I hope that together we can build a future that honors the lessons we've learned." Thomas, his eyes reflecting both maturity and the innocence of a young man still healing, replied, "I don't expect everything to be perfect overnight, but I do believe that we have the chance to move forward. I want to know you, not just as a man who made mistakes, but as someone who is willing to change for the better." His words, though simple, carried the weight of hope and a desire for a bond that transcended past transgressions. Sarah reached out, placing her hand gently on both of theirs. "Our journey will never be free of scars," she said softly, "but it's the effort we put into healing that truly defines us. We have an opportunity here, a chance to learn to forgive and to grow together. Let's honor our past by ensuring that our future is built on truth, compassion, and the courage to love again." In that moment, the walls that had long divided them began to crumble. The family resolved to embrace the road ahead, understanding that reconciliation was not a destination, but a continuous process, a series of small, courageous steps that transformed bitterness into forgiveness and isolation into unity. Over the following months, the new dynamic blossomed. James continued to attend Thomas's college events, gradually becoming a supportive presence in his son's life. Sarah, empowered by her own success and the strength of her convictions, found herself not only forgiving the past, but also extending compassion toward James, a gesture that enriched their interactions and redefined their shared history. Thomas, caught between two worlds, emerged as a bridge, a living testament to the power of second chances and the resilience of the human heart. As winter gave way to spring, the mansion hosted a celebration of renewal. In a symbolic event, the family unveiled a collaborative art piece in the garden, a mural that blended Sarah's creative vision, Thomas's youthful energy, and James's tentative but genuine contribution. The mural depicted a tree with deep, intertwined roots and branches reaching upward toward a bright, hopeful sky, a visual narrative of their journey from betrayal to reconciliation. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers gathered to witness the unveiling, and as the mural was revealed, applause filled the air. It was a moment of collective recognition that even the most fractured bonds could be mended with time, effort, and the courage to forgive. That day, As the sun set behind the mansion, casting a warm glow over the reunited family, the message was clear. While the past could never be entirely erased, the future was theirs to shape. Each step toward healing was a testament to the strength of love, the power of forgiveness, and the resilience of the human spirit. In the quiet aftermath of the celebration, as Sarah, James, and Thomas stood together in the soft light of dusk, they understood that their story was far from over. It was a living, evolving narrative, a story that, despite its painful chapters, held the promise of redemption and the possibility of new beginnings. And as they looked toward the horizon, united by their shared history and a commitment to a better tomorrow, they knew that they had found in each other a family reborn from the ashes of the past. 1 year after that transformative day, the mansion and its surroundings had taken on a new life, a living testimony to the power of healing, resilience, and forgiveness. What was once a cold fortress of betrayal and regret now shimmered with the warmth of renewed hope. Every corner of the estate, from the ornate drawing rooms to the sprawling manicured gardens, had become a sanctuary where memories of the past were acknowledged, yet no longer held dominion over the future. In the grand drawing room, where the echoes of harsh words and shattered dreams had once resounded, gentle laughter and soft conversation now filled the space. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating areas that had long been cloaked in shadow. Family portraits, once arranged with an air of formal detachment, were now interspersed with new photographs capturing moments of shared joy, images of Thomas studying with his father, of Sarah smiling warmly as she painted in her studio, and candid snapshots of the three of them gathered during family celebrations. Thomas had emerged as a confident and compassionate young man. His transformation was visible not only in his academic achievements at college, but also in the way he embraced life with an openness that was both refreshing and inspiring. No longer haunted by unanswered questions about his identity, he had begun to weave together the different threads of his past and present into a coherent tapestry that reflected both pain and beauty. He had learned to see the imperfections of his family not as burdens, but as essential parts of the intricate mosaic that defined who they were. On a crisp autumn afternoon, the family gathered in the mansion's expansive garden, a place that had, over time, become a symbol of their shared journey. The garden, which had once witnessed moments of loneliness and despair, now teemed with life. Golden leaves rustled softly as they fell around a long, wooden table set for a heartfelt family luncheon. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed tea, home-cooked delicacies, and the promise of new beginnings. James, who had once been a distant figure consumed by his ambition, now exuded a quiet determination to make amends. He had become an active participant in the healing process. Every action he took was imbued with a sincere desire to rebuild the bridges that had long been burned. Over the past year, he had not only attended every appointment related to Thomas's medical care, but also dedicated himself to community projects that aimed to support families facing similar struggles. His once cold, calculated demeanor had softened into one that embraced vulnerability as he openly discussed his regrets and the lessons he had learned from his past misdeeds. As the family sat around the table, sharing stories and laughter, the conversation naturally turned to memories of the past, the struggles they had endured, and the resilience that had brought them together. James recounted anecdotes from his youth, moments of hope and ambition before his pride had led him astray. His voice, once heavy with the burden of regret, now carried a tone of introspection and humility. "I used to believe that success was measured solely by wealth and power," he confessed, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I have learned that true success is measured by our capacity to love, to forgive, and to learn from our mistakes." Sarah listened intently, her face a map of the hardships she had overcome. The lines on her face, etched by years of pain and perseverance, now shone with a serene dignity. In quiet moments before the luncheon, she would often stroll through the garden, touching the delicate petals of blooming flowers and remembering how each of them had fought to emerge from harsh conditions into vibrant life. To her, the garden was not just a collection of plants, but a living metaphor for the transformation that she, too, had undergone. During the luncheon, as the conversation deepened, Thomas spoke with a thoughtful maturity that belied his age. "I have spent so many years wondering who I truly am," he said softly, his voice steady and clear. "I used to feel that a part of me was missing, like I was incomplete. But now I see that every piece of my story, every moment of pain, and every instance of love has contributed to who I am. I may have inherited your talents, Dad, but I've also inherited your faults. And that is what makes me human. His words resonated with both James and Sarah, stirring within them a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to rebuild their family. The luncheon stretched into a long afternoon filled with shared memories and dreams for the future. Laughter bubbled up as the family recounted humorous incidents from the past. Stories that once might have been sources of bitterness now served as reminders of their endurance and growth. In the weeks that followed, the mansion hosted a series of gatherings and events that brought the community together. One particularly memorable evening was the unveiling of a collaborative art piece in the garden, a mural that the family had worked on together. The mural depicted a magnificent phoenix rising from a bed of ashes, its wings outstretched toward a radiant sunrise. It was a vivid representation of their journey, the painful disintegration of old bonds and the triumphant emergence of something new, beautiful, and full of promise. Neighbors, friends, and even casual visitors were drawn to the mansion that day. As the family stood before the mural, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of twilight, there was a palpable sense of unity and hope. The applause and warm smiles of the onlookers affirmed what the family had come to understand. While the scars of the past would always remain, they did not have to define their future. Each brushstroke on the mural was a testament to the courage it took to forgive, to grow, and to embrace a future where every member of the family could flourish. Evenings at the mansion grew quieter and more reflective. On many nights, after the day's events had wound down and the mansion was enveloped in the gentle stillness of night, Sarah would sit in her art studio. Surrounded by canvases that captured both the darkness and the light of her journey, she would reflect on the transformative power of forgiveness. Her art had evolved beyond personal therapy. It had become a beacon of hope for others who were struggling to overcome their own hardships. In her work, Sarah expressed a belief that every ending was merely a prelude to a new beginning, a sentiment that resonated deeply with anyone who had ever experienced loss or pain. James, too, found solace in these quiet nights. Often, he would retreat to the study, a room filled with memories of past glories and regrets, and write long, reflective letters. In these letters, he addressed a younger version of himself, acknowledging his mistakes and vowing to be a better man. Though these letters were private, the act of writing them helped him process his grief and understand that redemption was not a destination, but an ongoing journey. Slowly, through countless small acts of contrition and care, he was learning what it meant to be a true father. For Thomas, the evolution was both internal and external. With his medical condition now managed and his identity clarified, he began to explore his passions with renewed vigor. He took up music, a pursuit that had once connected him so subtly to his father's world. Under James's tentative guidance, Thomas learned to play the piano, a skill that became a bridge between generations. The gentle notes that filled the mansion's corridors in the evenings became a soothing backdrop to their nightly gatherings, a reminder that despite the complexities of their past, there was beauty in shared experiences. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and bitter memories, had become a vibrant home. Its walls, steeped in history, now echoed with hope and renewal. The family's journey from heartbreak to healing was visible not only in their words, but in every aspect of this state. The once stoic facade had given way to an openness that invited others in. The community, too, had embraced the family's transformation, recognizing that even the most fractured bonds could be mended with time, effort, and a willingness to see beyond the past. As the first anniversary of their reunion drew to a close, the family gathered one final time in the garden for a quiet celebration. Under a starlit sky, with the gentle hum of crickets in the background and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, Sarah, James, and Thomas shared a moment of silent understanding. In that shared silence, they acknowledged the journey that had brought them together and the long road ahead, a road filled with challenges, but also with the promise of continued healing. Thomas, looking out at the vast expanse of the garden and the twinkling lights of the mansion, remarked, "I realize now that the past will always be a part of us, but it doesn't have to hold us back. We're free to choose who we want to be, despite everything." His words, sincere and heartfelt, encapsulated the essence of their journey, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of forgiveness. In that final embrace of the evening, the family knew that they had forged something enduring. The scars of betrayal were still visible, but they had become a part of a larger, more beautiful picture. A picture defined by courage, transformation, and the unwavering belief that even the deepest wounds could eventually yield to the light of hope.